So you know how at the end of every year we do the epitaph on the season? What was the cause of death? All right. So what was the cause of death for the Boston Bruins this year? What's on the tombstone?
Inconsistency.
Well, there you have it. The exact right end to this season, a loss in overtime. Dragging us to the end. So there you go. That was my father. Moments after the Boston Bruins lost their final game in overtime to the New Jersey Devils after clawing their way back up and having a pretty competitive game at points, and then they just fell apart. So welcome in, everyone, to your final regular season episode of Bruins Tape to Tape. I'm your host this evening, Caroline, and I am joined by my ever lovely co-host, Maria. Hello, Maria. How's it going?
Hello, Caroline. I'm good. I don't know how lovely I'm going to be as we get deeper into this episode, and I will do my utmost best not to blow a freaking gasket.
I would tell people normally to watch us on YouTube, but I would say definitely switch over to YouTube at some point during this episode so you can see the steam that's already starting to come out of Maria's ears.
Your dad should have added it was a slow and painful death this season. And why wouldn't they lose their last game in the manner and fashion in which they did, which has been occurring all goddamn season long?
Yep. It was everything that we experienced throughout the course of 82 games, all wrapped up into one game. But that's not really worth talking about specifically because that actual game is neither here nor there. The players have since cleaned out their lockers, and today, April 17th, they had their media availability where Boston's media had the chance to ask them to reflect, to, think about the future, what they're going to be doing this summer. Do they want to come back? Which is always a ridiculous question. And actually, I think Nikita Zadorov actually said that to one of the media folks. Like, you can't ask me that question. Whatever question it was. I loved it. I love watching him in these interviews. He scares me a little bit, and I like.
Yeah, he scares me. I would be scared if I was in that locker room and was asking him a question.
Exactly. But the Bruins are on the outside looking in for the first time officially since the 2015-2016 season. And it's weird. I don't know how to feel. I forgot what this feels like. And a lot of those guys never felt this.
You know what's even weirder is this was from Liam McHugh during a recent TNT broadcast. First time ever that 4 original 6 teams were not in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Boston Bruins, the New York Rangers, the Chicago Blackhawks, and the Detroit Red Wings.
Mm-hmm. And on top of that, I believe Sportsnet also shared that it's the first time ever that the Rangers, the Bruins, and the Penguins are all not in together. So great. 2 records set by this horrible.
But we're not here to talk about those other teams. We're here to talk about what is now royally pissed us off. Because we want our management teams to talk, but when they talk out of their asses and they insult the intelligence of those of us who watch and pay attention
Yeah.
They can all kiss my ass.
100%. We will get to that after we have our break, but just to give a quick summary and just a quick rundown about some of the conversations that were had, um, besides the, oh, how did you do? And blah, blah, blah. And, this is not my favorite media availability. And we'll talk a little bit about this after our break. But the one piece that is always kind of interesting is to hear from the players themselves about maybe some of the injuries or setbacks that they had experienced during the season. Interesting tidbits, nothing that really makes me feel any better about the product that I saw out on the ice, and I'm sure you agree with that, Maria.
I wholeheartedly agree with that.
But, just that's interesting. Charlie McAvoy had the Boston Bruins actually made it into the first round, was probably going to be coming back, if not in time for playoffs shortly thereafter. It sounds like he had finally finished up all his course of antibiotics and everything that was kind of going on with that whole situation, which is probably a little bit more scary, I think, than any of us truly realized. That we all knew it was a serious thing, but the fact that this happened in February and he's like only just now off the meds and everything to recover from that is just kind of reminds you, like, that was a freak thing that happened to him.
Yes.
And
The freakiness of the injury, how it was handled, I think, is still a question mark.
Yep. That was just crazy. I also didn't realize until this media availability that Hampus underwent a second surgical procedure. I think I thought it was a little bit different, but it sounds like, again, trying to come back a little bit too quickly.
A little too soon.
Oh, he
Set himself back.
used the word, and I don't know if he meant to say it or if he used the wrong words, but it sounded like he even said that he actually had refractured some element, not the main kneecap piece, but some element. And so there were some bits floating around and they had to get those taken out. So, so that was a little bit of a surprise to me in the sense that it sounded like that second procedure was maybe a little bit more of a bigger deal than I had at least initially thought. When they said, like, oh, he's just got to get a little bit of thing fixed up. And it's like, no, actually, he had to have a second surgery. What? So great. That's just, the cherry on top of the season. We also learned that probably one of the reasons why Elias Lindholm had such a lackluster start was the fact that he actually injured his back. We knew he was injured during preseason, and then, his wife had the baby, and so he was like a little extra delayed in coming back, but like it sounds like there was actually legitimately something there. Which again, all right. Great. And then
We talked off air, my tolerance for hearing about these things is waning at this point.
Yeah.
It's just waning. You guys, you had a terrible shit season.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just call it that.
And the other one that kind of didn't even register on my radar, and maybe others had noticed, but actually Pavel Zacha had mentioned having some knee and other lower body issues in the final 2 months, but no surgery. So hooray. That means I guess we can expect everybody, God willing, to show up on the first day of training camp and actually participate in a full-on training camp, unlike this last season. But I think
we'll see about that. It always seems like we hear about something in, August or September.
I know. Well, that's what happened with Marchand. So
really, you guys you've got plenty of time now to fix yourself up between now and next September. Can you just take care of whatever aches and pains you have now, since you're off and done on your vacations a little bit sooner than expected?
Yeah. But, it's like the expression, the straw that broke the camel's back. All of these things are little pieces of straw that just for this whole season, they couldn't string wins together. there was something happening clearly with the coaching staff and this and that and the other. And it was just, it's one thing after the other. And the next thing you know, you're falling faster than a rock down a well in the season, and you're done. So it's pretty interesting stuff if you got to clean your house, or you're whatever, to throw it on. I mean, that's how I got through listening to an hour's worth of a lot of the same questions and a lot of the same answers and whatever. Poor Husnudinov needs to take some language lessons
that
from
poor
Zadorov
guy
or something.
struggling. I know.
He was adorable, but I felt so bad listening to him because he just didn't have the English down, and so everything that was good, he was like, "It's perfect. It's perfect." Yeah. So it was great. But if you have a spare hour, like I said, or you're fiddle faddling around the house, give it a listen. We'll put the links in the show notes. But other than that, we will do a little spin around the rink, because even though the Bruins season is over and there's not much news now left to say, there's still now the whole second season, if you will. It is now the high holy days of the playoff season. So Maria, why don't you take us on a spin around the rink? When are playoffs starting, and what else should we be watching?
Playoffs begin April 19th. That is Saturday night. They kick off with the, Minnesota Wild series, which is that with Winnipeg,
which is going to be pretty fantastic. I do have to say, Gary Bettman, I'm sure, is just pleased as punch, because the matchups for this particular round are just absolutely off the charts.
They are off the charts.
Fantastic.
And it stinks that, some good teams are going to get knocked out in the first round, but the seedings are what they are. But you've got the Blues at the Jets to start on Saturday night. Mm-hmm. Then you've got the Avalanche and the Stars. That should be
rivalry there.
That's tremendous series. The ones that I'm going to be keeping my eye on.
I got a few.
Yeah. The Senators and the Maple Leafs. I so want the Senators to upset the
now.
Maple Leafs.
Extra want that.
Extra, right?
For
listeners, give me something to make the season worthwhile. But let's go Ottawa.
For listeners who don't necessarily know, or maybe you aren't in our Discord group, I think this is where you and I had this conversation that I cannot root for a Western Conference team. I can't. Don't ask me why. I can't explain it. And so when we've been discussing, who are we rooting for that we want to see, a lot of consensus supporting Ottawa. It started for me for Linus, and then also finding out about the Battle of Ontario. My God, they need to win.
I think there are going to be a lot of hockey fans that are going to become bandwagon Ottawa Senators fans. I'm not as adamant about not rooting for a team in the West. I frankly think at this point, I don't even want to see the Stanley Cup in the East. Just let it live in the West at this point. Okay. Just let it live in the West for the upcoming season. I do like the Colorado Avalanche. I think Cale Makar is my ideal hockey player.
Well, and Gabe Landeskog is slated to be back for his very first game in 3 years, right? It was 22.
Yeah.
His loan has ended with the AHL affiliate out there, so he's literally making his comeback in that first game. So that's gonna be exciting. If you've been watching the documentary,
Nathan McKinnon is a beast. So
he's just insane.
It's going to be fun watching those two teams, the Avalanche and the Stars, go at each other.
Mhm.
The Canadiens Capitals series, I can't see the Canadiens could win one game.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's my thought. They
Yeah.
could win one game in that series, but
Yeah.
the Capitals should make relatively easy work of them.
Yes.
But,
I
I
agree.
could look like a fool for saying that. Here's where I think the NHL and their quote unquote partner, ESPN,
Mm.
have totally mucked this up.
Mm.
Okay. First of all, the Panthers and the Lightning don't play their first game against each other until Tuesday night. And their start time is 8:30 friggin' p.m. Two East Coast teams. Who cares? Who gives a rat's ass about the Hurricanes and the Devils? Who cares at this
Yeah.
point? Those two Florida teams, that's all you've heard about from
Oh, yeah.
people on 32 Thoughts, Spittin' Chicklets, even the podcasts, our local podcasts. That's the series that people want to pay attention to. Those two teams, the Panthers and the Lightning, do not like each other. Do not
No.
like each other.
No.
You should be showcasing that. Yet you let your broadcast partner, ESPN, not showcase them. That's where I think the NHL can't get out of their own effing way.
Fact.
Sometimes.
Facts. I think my dad was saying the last time that they had a Battle of Florida series, it was a bloodbath. Like, it's going to be insane. That series is that, and I would argue in the West, probably the second most intense series is actually going to be Edmonton and LA, only because this is the third year in a row that these two teams have played against each other in the first round. So there is going to be a lot of bad blood in that specific series because of the history that they have had for 3 years. 3 years. Even the Devils in Carolina, they've played against each other. If not the last 2 seasons, they've played against each other 3 seasons maybe. But neither has both been in the same round. And there's just developed this tension between those two teams in LA and in Edmonton. So I think, that's a distant second to what's going to happen in Florida. And then I would say the third one is also then the Ottawa and Toronto one, only because it's the Battle of Ontario. Because I mean, there's going to be a ton of new fans coming out of the woodwork for Ottawa, but the fan base isn't there.
I don't get it. I don't understand what's so important on ESPN. Baseball right now
In April.
I mean, is it we all know the NBA is going to win out over
But
the
they
NHL.
start a week later. Their playoffs are always like a week or two later.
No,
So
the Celtics start their playoffs on Sunday.
Then that's either early or the NHL is late, because it's usually at least a week. But
I know.
still.
But it's just, I just don't understand why the NHL is allowing this to happen. This is supposed to be, this is when you showcase your sport, okay?
It's the best hockey
you should be cherry picking with series. You are showcasing. I'm sorry. You should be cherry picking them.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Well, leave it up to Gary Bettman and ESPN to get it wrong.
Can I say the ESPN broadcast teams?
Well, you know how I feel. You know how I feel.
Know, but
Ray Ferraro cannot shut up to save his life. I just want the person calling the game
to the TNT crew. Cannot hold a candle to the TNT crew in any way, shape, or form.
It's brutal. It's brutal.
It is brutal.
But we do get to watch the local broadcasts first round, because typically first round is still done by the local affiliates. So you've got that at least. But still, they're at the mercy of the scheduler for ESPN. So and that's a lot of sitting
my
around.
rant on that. When I saw the schedule for that, and I'm like, first of all, why the hell are they not playing until Tuesday?
Well, Colorado's been done since Sunday or Monday.
Like,
they're done. They were sitting for 5 days. Like, that's terrible.
I know, right? So again,
Anyway.
what do we know? Maybe we're missing something. I don't know. Maybe we're missing something.
But, you mentioned the Minnesota Wild. They captured their spot in pretty fantastic fashion. It went into overtime. If you haven't seen the video clips, I mean, they've been all over my social media. But then again, I follow a lot of hockey stuff, so my algorithms are on point. But they or Gustafsson himself tapped Marc-Andre Fleury to go in and be in the overtime. And he made a 2-pad stack. Like, he made some saves in that overtime. And
I think he kissed the post at one point during that overtime. Yep.
He was caught tapping the post. I had to, of course, show my daughter. And they made it through. And, that could very well have been his absolute final time actually playing the game that he loves so much. Obviously, Gustafsson is their starter, and he's going to probably be the one going all the way. And unless something crazy happens, he's officially done, which is crazy to see. There won't ever be a goaltender like him again in every way that you could possibly quantify that statement. So,
and I may be mistaken, but didn't they punch their ticket into the wild card with that
exactly
overtime win?
Yes. Yep. They did that at the very last game there. So, and then the other playoff hopeful team in the Boston area, of course, the Boston Fleet. They've got 3 games remaining. NESN does carry that. So again, highly recommend watching their games on NESN, and hopefully they finish strong. I think they've been slipping in the last couple of games, but their playoffs
dropped the last two games, which is not how you want to develop some steam heading into the playoffs. But they've got some time to right the ship before their playoffs begin on May 5th.
And remember, their playoff is obviously shorter; doesn't go as far into the summer because there are only 6 teams and only 4 go in.
Yes.
So it's but shorter, but still very exciting. And actually, kind of fun fact, Montreal is the only city that has all of their teams, all their professional sports teams, going into the postseason right now. They're the only one.
Interesting.
So, yep. NHL, PWHL, whatever else I saw. I don't know what other sports, but I did see it said all of their sports. So I thought that was kind of cool. Good for them.
That is kind of cool.
I don't know.
Well, but I'm not rooting for the Montreal Canadiens.
No, hell no, never. So with that, we're going to take a quick break from our sponsor, and then brace yourselves because we're about to go. I was going to say unhinged, but that sounds terrifying. We're going to unleash on this.
We are going to unleash on our management and ownership.
Yeah. So stay tuned. Gear up and support the pod. The Bruins are making their push, and there's no better time to show your support. Whether you need a fresh jersey, a cozy hoodie for those chilly playoff nights, or the perfect hat to rep the team every day, the NHL shop has you covered. With the trade deadline, playoffs, and offseason all coming up, now's the time to stock up on all your Boston Bruins and NHL gear. Plus, when you shop through our affiliate link, you're not just supporting the team, you're also supporting your favorite Bruins podcast. So grab your gear and help the pod. Check out the affiliate link in our show notes.
The NBA 82-game grind is done, and now the real fun begins. The NBA playoffs are here, and it's time for all the high-stakes drama, clutch moments, and jaw-dropping plays. I can't wait. If you're looking to make the playoffs even more exciting, DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered as an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Try placing a bet on your favorite player's performance, Will they drop 30 points, 40 or more? It's your call. Here's something special for first-timers. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Make it a playoff run to remember with DraftKings. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings, the crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over, age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in New Hampshire, Oregon, and Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ftball. NFL Plus Premium offer available only to new and former NFL Plus subscribers. Additional NFL Plus Premium terms at nfl.com/terms.
So, Maria, before we really dive in, we were having a conversation about some of those interviews that we heard today, and we heard a couple of things that we really liked to hear. And we're going to play them for you. But first, let's listen to this clip from Morgan Geekie.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you can stick around, like I said, I love it here, and I'd love to be here as long as I can. So that's definitely a goal. But especially with a family now and being able to be in one spot would be awesome. But like I said, it's a business at the end of the day, and people are going to have their opinions and they're going to decide what they want to decide. But if it was up to me, I'd love to stay as long as I can, and I can't say enough about good things about the organization and the guys and the culture here. So definitely I would love to stay for as long as I could.
So Maria, you've heard now straight from the horse's mouth. He really loves it here in Boston. Are you feeling confident in how this summer is going to turn out for him, both on the financial side and also maintenance side going into the new year? What are your expectations on that front?
No, I don't expect anything to go well for him because, first of all, I don't trust. I no longer trust Don Sweeney nor Cam Neely when it comes to negotiating contracts with players. And while I appreciate what Morgan Geekie said, what he has done now is given them a negotiating tactic that they could potentially use against him. Oh, look, he really wants to stay here. He really wants to be a Bruin. Let's see if we can nickel and dime him and lowball him. The other thing that I expect them to use is the fact that he's had so much success by playing along David Pastrnak. And my expectation is, because Neely is a snake, that they will also then try to use that against him.
Right.
And what
We're
I would have
good only because of him. Right.
And I know we want honesty from the players. What I would have preferred him to say is, right, we just ended the season. I need to wrap my head around how this season ended. And that's something to think about down the road.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do I want him to stay here? Do I think he should stay here? Yes, because I've said it before. If Pasta is happy, then everyone in the organization should be happy.
Well, and then so speaking of David Pastrnak, of course, the question came up in his interview about the future of the captaincy and leadership. And this is what he had to say.
Would you like to win the season?
Listen, it's like I said, like the leaders I had around me, it was never about who wears the C or who wears the A. Everybody in the room is equal here, and we need to make sure that, that's one of the things that we have to found a group of the core again that's, willing to put the work in. And like I said, it's not about one guy. It's going to be multiple of us, and we need to be working together, and like I said, doesn't matter who's gonna end up wearing any letter, but it starts in a group. Everybody's equal here, no matter if you're young or older, and that's what always been like, and we have to keep it going.
So, Maria, what's your take on what he said about, everyone being equal and everyone doing the work and not really interested in, it sounded to me that he wasn't really interested in having that conversation. He wasn't willing to entertain that idea at all, because anybody could say, oh yeah, no, of course that would be great, but like, that's not my decision. He didn't give the media anything to hang on to.
Correct.
I thought that was a masterclass in this is how you don't show your hand to especially the people who are actually watching.
Yeah, and that to me is all the reason why you should consider him as your next captain for the Boston Bruins.
Yep.
What he did this season, given everything that went on, the fact that David Pastrnak is not in the postseason is fucking sinful.
Mm-hmm.
Sinful and shameful that he is not on a team that is at least going into the first round of the playoffs. Be that as it may, I know he made reference to the fact that, and again, that to me speaks to a culture that has been built over time that he clearly has received the benefit of, has been listening, has absorbed, right? Wants to carry on that foundation.
Yep.
Because, and he also referenced, the void left by Charlie McAvoy not being available, Hampus Lindholm not being available, even though he didn't have a letter on his sweater. The one thing he neglected to say is the void that was created when they actually traded their captain at the time.
Yep. But I think that just kind of lends to his savvy in that,
his growth and maturity.
Yeah, he didn't have to talk about, well, you just got rid of all of the leaders. Other players talked about that, but for him, I think he knew, that's something that he didn't have control over, right? He didn't have control over the fact that all of a sudden in an instant, they were all gone. It sounds like from some of the other interviews that they all went at the exact same time too. So like a lot of people found out boom, 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 that all four of these guys were gone. And so I think it was smart of him to kind of not really focus on any of those guys being traded away and more so saying like, I didn't even have access to the people who were still on this team who could have helped me.
Correct.
And I still took it on. I did all that work. And so for that reason, small plug, obviously, for ourselves as an NHL Shop affiliate, I am personally holding off on purchasing my new Boston Bruins jersey because I now have none. Both guys are gone. I'm going to wait and buy using our link and code in the fall to get a Pastrnak jersey. I'm just waiting to see if it's going to come with a letter or not. So I don't know about you, Maria, but that's what I got.
The way I feel about the Jacobs family right now, I wouldn't give them a penny for a jersey.
I know.
I know. Give them a penny for a jersey. I might change my mind when I see if and what happens in the off season.
Yeah.
But I do think that you saw other players coming to David Pasternak's aid because of, not having Charlie McAvoy available and in the room. The fact that Brad Marchand, who was wearing the C, was traded to the Florida Panthers. And you saw guys like Nikita Zadorov and even Elias Lindholm, speaking honestly and openly about, their frustrations and, taking on some leadership responsibilities to aid the guy who's basically been carrying them on the ice since January 1.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty clear. And, obviously, one of the things, as I had teased at the start of the show, that I don't love about these media availabilities, like, yes, there are great things. We get to hear from some of the players that maybe we don't hear from a lot, or we, maybe hear a little personal anecdotes and things like nice little fluffy things that we like. But the other thing is that they can't be completely honest about everything, right? Still, clearly it was a significant impact on the team psychologically, and one or two players mentioned it from that perspective as well. Others just said how it was hard that these guys were gone, that it wasn't just a hole that was left behind because one player was, traded away. This was a gaping hole left behind because of how many people went away.
Their
and I have to say,
core was gutted.
Right. And I think it was Pasta who said that, we just got to create our new core now. We just have to identify those new guys who can be that new core and move on with them. And I was pleased to hear him say a lot of the same things that we've known about the Boston Bruins culture, because I like it. I think it's very different than the locker room of a lot of other teams that, maybe are a little bit less healthy. And to hear him kind of still continue to talk about it, because he was around with Chara, right? He was, and he got that all from Bergie, and he got that from Marshy, and he's living it, and he's teaching it and talking about it. And that's great to hear that kind of be able to continue. I was honestly surprised and I guess kind of impressed by Nikita Zadorov and his, at least off the ice, leadership. I will still say I am mixed feelings about him as a player, his performance on the ice. I'm like, I'm not 100% sold.
You're not alone. I mean, his decision making at the start
some of his
season
hockey IQ
was very, very questionable. And I started to wonder, like,
what's he
what
bringing?
level is your hockey IQ at right now, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
it
sounds like I'm being demeaning and insulting, and that's not how I'm intending it to be. But the decision making sometimes was like, dude, what are you thinking right now?
Yeah, but I have to say, again, with full disclosure, coming from a Polish family and Slavs and their very direct nature and how they speak to you, I don't know if it was like a comfort thing, but listening to him talk, not the accent, but the way that he talks, very direct. We joked about this offline earlier. I said, he's kind of a scary dude. He's going to be very motivational, but in a scary way. Like, he'll come in and say, you need to skate harder. You need to skate faster. Okay. You need to believe in yourself. You need to have faith. Okay. Like, equally supportive and holding you accountable, but in a yelling way. But the yelling is love. I don't know.
Well, in a season that didn't bring a lot of chuckles to my face.
Yeah.
When he was asked about the Jeremy Swayman almost fight, and his response was, "Oh, is that what we're calling it? No comment." To me, I was just like, "All right, give me that all the time." I love that stuff. I love that stuff because I think more often than not that if that first response is typically the most honest and reactive response, right?
Yeah.
Now, I get it. You walked it back, right? You can't hurt your $8 million goalie's feelings. I get it.
Yeah. But I think he's going to have a voice now that, not that he couldn't, right? It's just that it wasn't maybe his place to, because of, the core leaders, right?
You're the
wasn't
new guy
appropriate.
coming in. You're the new guy coming in. You still had Charlie McAvoy available. You still had Brandon Carlo available.
Right.
Charlie Coyle was still around. Brad
Yeah.
Marchand had the C.
Brando.
Costa had a letter.
Yeah.
So, right.
It wasn't his place. And he
It
was
wasn't
new.
his place.
And it was his first season. But
Yeah.
I think my opinion about him in terms of what he is going to bring to this team has changed. Because we talk about this on the podcast all the time, that everybody has a job, right? Not just a job on the ice, but a job off the ice, right? And I can see him now filling a void in his brand of leadership, his very direct leadership, calling it as he sees it, is a great accountability tool. Because I don't think he's not gonna sugarcoat it. Because
No.
Slavic
And he
people don't
shouldn't.
do that.
He shouldn't.
And he shouldn't. And
Right.
I don't know that there was truly a voice like that on the team 6 months ago. Maybe Brad Marchand, but he's the one person and he was a captain and he's doing all the other things that a captain does, right? You need someone else to also be doing that. You know, maybe that's what Uncle Nick kind of was doing in a way, right? With his form of accountability, granted in a softer way, but who knows? But understanding this about Zadorov and his leadership and seeing him step in has completely changed my perspective of how he can truly contribute to this team in a really meaningful way. I don't know about you.
No. I agree with you. I would like to see, his decision making improve with the upcoming season or over the course of the summer. But that could be said about a lot of our players. I mean,
Lorai.
While we're doing an epitaph, okay, Mason Lorai was a disaster to finish the season. Like I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
To him.
Yeah.
After he was playing.
He was amazing.
Huge. He was very, very good. Immediately after Charlie McAvoy's injury, and then his progression defensively just took a nosedive that he couldn't recover from.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know what his plus minus finished at, but it was
40.
Pretty gross. And I know that's not the
41.
only stat. Yeah. That's disgusting. It's sorry.
Horrible. It's so bad.
That's disgusting. And we had conversations in our Discord about, does he really want to be a defensive defenseman? Because he seems to want to focus on his offensive skills as a defenseman. But kiddo, you still got to play some defense.
Well, and to your point, we didn't have an opportunity to have obviously a podcast between when the Bruins played Pittsburgh and today, because that's just when it happened. And at the very start of that game, something really struck me. Was it? Oh, it wasn't a Nesson. It was a national game. Yeah. So it was one of the announcers, play-by-play color guys, talking right before the puck drop about, different players on the team. And they talked first about Karlsson, who has notoriously been known as a defenseman who, tries to score 1 million goals. And that's obviously how he won the Norris in spite of having terrible actual defensive stats. And the way that the announcer was kind of talking about Karlsson was kind of not derogatory, but he
wasn't
that guy's
throwing flowers at him. He wasn't throwing flowers at him.
Right. That guy, he's a guy, but he's old. So, it is what it is. But he should have spent more of his career focusing on actually being a defenseman. And then he pivots and he says, this is what Mason Lorai is facing right now. That he needs to decide now, because he's 23 years old. He needs to decide now, do you want to be a defenseman? Because if not, you're going to be like Karlsson and be no good as a defenseman and basically so as an offensive player who is a defenseman. Like, you're not a forward, so you can't compete with forwards if your job is defense. Like, do you want to be one or the other? You have to decide now. It's at a pivotal point in his career. And I thought, holy cow, I never even thought of it that way. But he's absolutely right. What do you want to actually be?
But how much of that do we put on the player, and how much do we put on
100%.
the coaching and scouting staff? Because they're the ones
100%.
that are putting this kid in the position of, we want you to quarterback the power play. You're the quarterback of the power play. We want you to quarterback the power play. Okay?
Which is fine.
Yes.
For that,
there needs to be a freaking balance.
Right. And I do wonder, you make an excellent point then, because I have firmly believed that while some of his on ice mistakes are him, because he's a kid and he's learning and he's got to get exposed to these things. But what is that messaging? Was he to some degree either overtly or tacitly told, like, okay, well, now that Charlie is out, Hampus is out, like, you're our next most offensive defenseman, be like them, except wait a minute, those guys are pushing 30 and he's barely old enough to drink. So you can't, like, there's clearly a disconnect there, because those guys have had years of experience doing both of those things. And you're now maybe asking a 23-year-old to pick up the offensive and defensive pace of these two veterans. So I think there was something not right in that, either communication or whatever.
And I think some of this is a damnation of the coaching staff as well. Yeah. As far as I'm concerned. You can tell me all you want, right? Okay, I get it. Joe Sacco was put in an untenable position. Untenable position. Mm-hmm. But this management team doesn't know what to do with themselves when they have good coaches. They don't know how to manage them.
Yeah.
Or are they just overall not capable of identifying?
Yeah.
Okay. Of identifying a good coaching staff.
Right.
You left Jim Montgomery to start the season flailing around in the wind, right? With no contract. Didn't seem like they were having conversations. Story was they offered him. He said no. Wasn't sure what he wanted to do. This, that, and the other thing. They
didn't want him. They didn't want him.
Freaking something.
And they
with
gave
this
him
tandem of Neely and Sweeney when it comes to these types of decisions. Okay. And now they use the Boston Globe as their mouthpieces. All right. As their mouthpiece to, throw the outgoing person under the bus. Yep. This is out of the book, chapter and verse of what Robert Kraft has been doing since he not fired, but he did fire Bill Belichick. Okay?
Exactly. So how many times have we seen this in other facets of our own lives, right? Where you kind of set someone up and say, oh, no, you're in charge, but you're not given the resources. You're not given the support. You're not given the time.
Coaches. We're going to keep these guys. We like these guys.
Right. Okay. So you didn't then let Jim Montgomery have his own coaching staff, and you knew that the relationship was probably starting to go south. So you just let him flail, like you said, and then wait and see what happens, and then we can just fire him. And he saw the writing on the wall. You could see his demeanor change as the clock went by. But even with Joe Sacco, they never replaced him on the staff. So he was doing his job and the interim head coach's job. Why would they not then just say, like, oh, well, let's bring someone up from Providence, right? Like, have them be interim or whatever, or freaking hire some. I don't understand why they can't hire a non-head coach in season. Like, why didn't they fill that role? He wasn't the penalty kill, was he? He was penalty kill. He was a PK. No wonder it suffered, because the man can't do two jobs. You can't.
No, for an organization that has used the word accountability, how many times over the course of this season, when are Charlie, Cam, and Don going to look in the goddamn mirrors and hold themselves accountable for where we find ourselves now? When? How many more kicks at the goddamn can are we going to give Don and Cam?
Well, we'll pose this to our listeners, and make sure you find us on all of our socials to tell us what you think, or join us in our Discord. But per Charlie Jacobs to the Globe, quote, "It's hard for me to wrap my head around why people call for Cam Neely and Don Sweeney's heads. Rather than blow up the Bruins, they, quote, need to build, to use Don's term specifically, to retool." Are you joking?
And he also used the word recovery. They're going to work on a recovery. So let me set the table for this.
What?
Okay?
What's the GM's job?
Charlie Jacob.
Oh no, Maria, you froze.
To fan. Okay?
Wait, you froze. You froze. You have to start over. All right. All right, Maria. So what is it?
Charlie Jacobs is a jock-sniffing buffoon, okay? He insults the intelligence of every and any Bruins fan that pays time, attention, and spends money to watch this team. How dare you say that you are a Bruin? You have no fucking clue what it means to be a Bruin. You don't bleed black and gold. The only thing your family bleeds is green for money.
Exactly.
Okay? That's all you care about. You don't care about winning a Stanley Cup. You don't care about championships.
You don't care about
the fans. You care about making sure that there are butts in those seats.
But even then they don't care, because
you reward
what's happening in Seattle. Immediately at the end of their season, their management came out and they said this was unacceptable. We are recommitting ourselves to the fans and to this team. They're offering lower prices for their tickets. They're giving special discounts on things like concessions and what have you to season ticket holders. That's a commitment.
And
what do we get? Nothing. Instead, we got this guy saying, I don't understand why people want them fired. My dude, good sir, when your team fails to actually win a Stanley Cup with the roster that we have had over the last 10 years, and you keep getting these players who either walk out the door, who don't become something, and you also throw away your franchise captain, just like when your team is going down the toilet, you fire the coach.
Yep.
You
can't pool when you negotiate.
You fire the GM.
Okay. So, and this is how I know that he is a fraud, because now, okay, Cam, Don, Charlie, right? They only sit down with the Boston Globe. So you don't even have the cojones to sit down with, I don't know, other members of the media that are covering your team day in and day out for 82 freaking games. You only go to the soft landing spot. Okay. Because what are you afraid of? Are you afraid of the line of questioning you may receive?
100%.
Okay. But
because I guarantee nobody will ask these questions next week, which, by the way, we have to wait a whole extra week.
Yes.
To hear from management.
Yes.
No, anybody who would even have maybe the guts to ask a question like this or say, what do you mean you don't know why people are saying this? They would never be allowed back into TD Garden. And you know it.
It's insulting to all Bruins fans for him to say that he can't understand or he can't wrap his head around why there would be conversation and anger about the fact that you are letting this duo potentially make important and critical decisions, because for the first time in a long time, you are actually entering a draft that will have meaning and significance. And you need a bigger sample size from these two than what you've already seen about their drafting capabilities. Please.
Look what happened
sir.
in 2015.
Okay. Please, sir.
His first draft.
Okay. And so, okay, you see, now this is him talking. Allegedly, this is him speaking, talking about Charlie, talking about how training camp looked, that it was disjointed. It was unorganized. They weren't doing this breakout. They weren't. Who's what owner talks like that? He's getting that from
Cam,
his BFF Cam. Okay.
Yeah.
Because look,
Cam has him right where he wants him.
He has the Jacobs family there, right, wrapped around his little finger. Okay. Be that as it may. Now, you, Mr. Owner, this is your team. No, this is your team, right? You see this training camp that's turning into a potential shit show, and you don't think to have a conversation with your GM or your president saying, what the hell is going on here? Or if the president is seeing this, he doesn't have a conversation. Nobody out of that trio thinks about having a conversation, reining in the coaching staff, saying, what the hell is going on here? What is going on here? I mean, am I crazy? Isn't that the responsibility of a GM? Isn't that part of his job?
The fact that he comes across, and I'm sure it will come across exactly the same in a week, like everything is copacetic, blows my mind. It blows my mind, because even if let's say Cam has him right where he wants him, right? You know, he's got him, he can do whatever he wants, right? Because he's Cam Neely, he's got his number up there, like, okay, maybe he's whatever, right? But sir, you gotta have eyeballs, even if you don't watch any of these games, which I can't imagine that you genuinely actually watch any of these games. But then you have to surely be checking the score sheets. If not for yourself, you're hearing it from the other owners, because I'm sure those other owners, even though not all of them are sports people, they know enough if their team is good or not to tease you or whatever when you all go to Florida. Like, how can you then not look at that and then turn to the two people who are in charge of the product that is on the ice and the people behind the bench and not say exactly the words that you just said, which is, what the hell is happening here? You need to fix this or you're done. How is that not a legitimate threat?
Because I would like to think that if I'm a general manager and I'm seeing disjointedness or disorganization from my coaching staff during training camp, when I've gone out and I've signed high-priced guys to bring them in, I would like to think that I'm having a little sit down. I'm having a little sit down and saying, what the hell are you guys doing here? What is going on here? Do we have a goddamn plan?
No.
Because we could all see at the start of the season that things did not look right.
Mm-mm.
The veterans looked out of sync. People who we thought were being tagged to play on lines together had virtually no chemistry whatsoever.
No.
Areas that were strength for your team, like your power play, your penalty kill,
Gone.
gone. Like, whose responsibility was that? This
The
was all
GM.
this was
general
all Jim
manager.
Montgomery's fault, because hold on a minute. Okay. Jim Montgomery was fired and 5 minutes later was hired by the St. Louis Blues, and they are now in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So how bad of a coach was Jim Montgomery?
Right.
How bad
Right.
of a coach was Jim Montgomery?
And
And
Sacco
I'm not saying,
was
listen,
Sacco was a non-variable in the whole situation, because it's almost as if, not to knock his head coaching abilities whatsoever, but like nothing changed. They didn't get worse. They didn't get better. They
No.
stayed the same. So does that mean like a potato could have coached this team just as well?
like you can't,
What does that mean?
you can't say that you can't wrap your head around why we would be upset as fans.
Insulting.
Because you yourself, okay, saw and claim you saw the disjointedness, and yet what you thought just firing the coach, right? This is the MO of this trio, okay? Anything goes wrong, just fire the coach.
Right.
This is what we're gonna do. Just fire the coach.
Right.
Okay.
But how
Now
many
we've
times
started
are you gonna fire
firing
a
players.
coach?
Now we've started firing players and shipping off players to what end? To what end? We're supposed to have faith. We're supposed to have faith
Mm-hmm.
that this duo, who has had now 10 years, 10 years,
And we haven't had a reasonable run in 5. 6 years. 6 years since we were at a cup final. 6 years.
this
The
season-
60% failure rate,
Right.
Maria.
Yes, this season, their record was the worst that it's been since 1959, courtesy of Hockey Reference. Okay. If the Philadelphia Flyers manage to get 1 point in their game tonight, you will clinch the 4th worst record in the league. The Boston freaking Bruins.
2 years after breaking the league record, most wins in a single season.
And Charlie Jacobs can't understand or wrap his head around why.
It's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling.
It's so goddamn frustrating. And when I read things from him, I'm incredibly proud to be a Bostonian. No, you're not. You're only here because Daddy put you here. Okay? Okay?
Yep.
Daddy put you in the seat that you are in, Charlie.
Yep. Well, in 1 week's time, we will hear from the Mensa Brain Trust that is Boston Bruins management. I'm not optimistic that Joe Sacco will be at the helm, because he had his media availability today, which, if you recall, in the past, it's been the 4 people leading the team.
Right.
And a little bit of his interview. I mean, you could read it in a multitude of different ways, but it sounds to me like no decisions have been made. And that in and of itself tells you what's probably going to happen, which is he's not going to continue on as the head coach, interim or otherwise, because if they wanted him, he'd know they'd have had that conversation, right?
They're waiting to see what happens likely with
They want to see
the New York
they're going to wait and
Rangers,
see who's
the Pittsburgh
available.
team. Correct. They're going to wait and see potentially what other teams do, who might be getting let go. And again, I just can't get past the fact that
Yeah.
This ownership had, and this man had the balls
He's
to say
brainless.
right. And I have no tolerance. When anybody in any work environment throws the last person who was there under the bus. Because you know what? Any missteps that were made under your goddamn watch.
The buck stops with the president of hockey ops and then really Charlie Jacobs, right?
Okay.
And if there's failure to such a degree, such a catastrophic, whatever the inverse is of meteoric failure in such a short period of time, I'm just speechless. I am speechless that someone could witness this who has even an iota of understanding of this team. To then just say, well, I don't really know what's the problem. We're going to have to look at it this summer. I don't have answers.
We're not the only ones saying this and referring to the Bruins as being in a mess. They're a mess.
Yep.
When is the last time we heard Bruins and mess in the same sentence? Now,
25 years,
right? It's an organizational disaster.
Yep.
It started with the contract negotiations.
Yeah.
Between Jeremy Swayman and, let's call a spade, Cam Neely.
Yes.
Okay. That went off the rails in a quick hurry. The player did not do himself any good by speaking, and Cam Neely
never speak.
was
Oh my God.
right. He can speak.
He should never speak.
What he, yeah, like,
that's another episode.
No, that's another episode. He needs to get his head, like, next season.
I can't handle it.
He better be ready to play lights out, because the fan base, he's getting a pass. This is
his first big boy year.
Okay. But next season, dude, you better be playing lights out, or this fan base will turn on you, just like we're turning on Jacobs, Neely, Sweeney. Okay. And
look, we got a vacancy. We don't have a Matt Grzelcyk anymore. We don't have a Trent Frederick. There's a vacancy for villain on this team.
He could be it. He could be it. I don't want him to be it.
No.
I don't want him to be it. But he was a part of the problem.
Well,
he was not the only problem, but he was a part of.
And he has to understand, justified or not, it doesn't ever have to be justified to be labeled the villain. I mean, look at Tuukka Rask, the winningest goalie in franchise history.
Correct. Yep.
And how quickly the city would turn on him in a game, in a week.
Constantly turning on him.
He was the villain.
Yeah. Well, right now we have our three villains. Right now we
focus
have our
on them.
Villains. It's just, I would just not even rather hear you, right? If that's the kind of stuff you're going to say.
Yeah. Don't speak.
It's a slap in the face to fans. You put out a shit product all season long.
I don't know why nobody likes this.
Okay. And you reward fans and season ticket holders by once again increasing season ticket prices. And you want me to buy in to the bullshit that you're shoveling? Yeah, no. I'm good.
No.
I'm good.
No, thank you. No. Well, we shall know in a week. Like I said, it should give me time to either get more mad or cool off. I can't tell yet because I'm pretty mad right now. Thank you, Maria. Very stimulating conversation.
You You teed me up. You told me you wanted to tee me up.
I sure did.
And you got me teed out, and I sound like a lunatic.
Not at all.
But I'm just like, I cannot tolerate when someone is trying to insult our intelligence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Well, with that being said, we will still have weekly episodes throughout the summer. Join us. We'll be, of course, going live at the start of our new year, which is July 1st. If there are any trades, any significant things, we might have a live in that instance. But otherwise, we'll have plenty to talk about over the summer, from trades, free agency, signings, and just a whole bunch of other really interesting little tidbits and player reviews as we get closer. So your home for Boston Bruins news and interesting things is still around for the summer. But with that, any other final words, Maria?
I'm looking forward to watching some good NHL playoff hockey.
Absolutely.
And I'm telling you right now, I am going to root for the Florida Panthers.
You are?
Yep.
I can't do it.
Only because I want to stick it.
Well, if it comes to it and I have to.
I know it's difficult for you, but I'm a vindictive, you know what? And so.
I know. But make sure you rate and review the podcast to help us get discovered by other fans of the Boston Bruins, and follow us on all of our socials. And as always, go Bees!
Go Bees!